Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're having a first look at Laura and Montana. Montana's about 15 years old. She's been leasing this horse for quite a while, but only in the last 6 months she began to work with Aaron in Newfoundland, who helped her get as far as she has, which is quite far. I'm very pleased with this. You've done a really good job with this horse. This is a good stretch in the walk that you have going on right here. Now we can see, looking at this horse behind the saddle, that we still have a little bit of improvement to go in terms of building top line, but you're well on your way to getting that to happen. So very good. Walk here is very good. It's active and has a good steady rhythm to it, and the horse is stretching all the way deep into the contact, so exactly what we want it to have happen. Really good. Now she's still working in the shambone, and that's a good thing, and I saw that later on. I think that's a good idea as when you're working, for instance, into your canter transitions. I think it really helps you there. So I would keep this going like this for a little while longer till you feel more consistent in it, and then you can begin to take that away. It's really good here. I feel like you could still try for a little bit bigger walk there. But, you know, considering what this horse is, which is a smaller horse, it is a little bit straight in the hocks behind. Not terribly, though. So I think you're getting a good, especially at the age this horse is. This was 15. Evidently, this horse came in as a school horse at 8 years old, kind of a green school horse. And I'm sure it was a little frustrating to work with until you began to do this work. But how beautiful all that was. Your work in hand was right in track with where it should be. And when you get on, it's exactly where it should be. Really good, steady, active rhythm. You see as that slows down there a little bit, but you do the right thing to keep it going. And just a little note on how you're sitting there. I love how straight your upper body is. It's really good, and everything is really good. The only thing I'm seeing here is just that you're a little bit in a chair seat, but that's because of the type of saddle you're trying to ride with, kind of a longer stirrup in a more jumping type stirrup. And of course, that when you do that, it's always going to put you in a little bit of a chair seat. That is, your legs are a little bit too far out in front of you. But you know, if that's the way the horse, the saddle sits you, there's not much you can do about that if you can't get the saddle balanced into a position that it allows you to do that. But of course, we have to remember that jumping saddles are designed to have the seat back a little bit and to be ridden more in a two-point position, this sort of thing. So it makes a difference when we're trying to do flat work in them. But you're doing a very good job. I like how your toe is lifted, your leg is long and relaxed, and I love how straight your upper body is. You're lifting up your chest exactly how it should be. And I like how you're keeping your hands up in front of you as you ride, exactly where it should be. A lot of people, when they first begin this work, have the bad habit of holding their hands down low, thinking that's going to make the horse stretch into the contact, but it actually doesn't. The lower you hold your hands, the more it makes the horse want to brace upward against your hands. Good leg yield there. Started and lost the rhythm for just a moment, but it came on through from your leg and stretched back into a beautiful contact. Really good work there. We've certainly been enjoying having Erin with us. I'm sure you're missing her back there in Newfoundland. I think she's going to go back for a while in December, but we're certainly enjoying having her with us in San Diego. She's done a very good job getting you started with this. Really good stretch in that right now. Now I just noticed as you came around that corner there that the horse's flanks begin to come in a little bit. That is, the belly began to raise a little bit. Take a look at the waistline right now. You can see how that's changed a little bit from where we started. If you look right where that color change is in the middle of the horse, that was much more extended out to the sides only a few moments ago, and now it's pulled up quite nicely. And that's exactly what we're looking to see happen. Well, we talk a lot about the top line, but it's really both lines. I mean, consider what we do to be Pilates, if you will, that is core strengthening for a quadruped, is the way I look at it. But we can see that core beginning to engage now. So the core must engage upward just like the top line has to engage upward. They work together. I love how lovely and relaxed the underside of this neck, horse's neck is throughout this. Really good rhythmic step. I like how you're really letting the horse stretch all the way into that contact. And that's really good how the horse isn't coming behind the vertical at all in what you're doing here, and that's very good, just exactly what we're looking for. Notice as she goes down that you get a little bit more depth of overreach there. Very nice work. And I like how, you know, when something happened there, you lifted your hands up instead of pulled your hands back at you. Very good rhythm here in the walk. Now, it's hard for me to tell whether you're doing that or not, but of course, the next thing in your position, and the hardest thing in the position, is being sure that in all this work that your outside leg is back from your hip. And if you don't know what I'm talking about by that, when we say to put the outside leg back, we don't mean from the knee. If you do that, nothing happens with your seat bones. But as you bring your leg back, your knee on the outside of the saddle should come away from the saddle flap a little bit as you reach back from your hip to lengthen your leg instead of just pulling it back from the knee. And when you do that, you'll feel that you sit, it puts more weight on your inside seat bones, and that will make all of your turns much easier to make, as the horse will naturally bend away from that little more weight on the inside once the horse's back begins to come up. So just bear that in mind as you begin, looking for places to improve your seat and position. Really nice here. Now, of course, from the position, once you get stretched all the way down, then we can begin to bring the pole up, just as you kind of did a minute ago. I saw you raise your hands out in front of you. But when you're ready to do that, now, of course, when we begin to ask the pole to come up a little bit, that shin bone has to be quite loose to be sure that we can do that. And I think you're almost to that point. I think you could start having some days without the shin bone, just doing the walk work, and maybe on the days for a while that you're only going to walk, and then have some days where you maybe try the trot. Certainly don't try the canter yet without it, from what I saw here. But you certainly, I think, could begin to do the walk work. And if you begin to have a difficulty, just put the shin bone back on. Simple as that. So remember, our whole rule of thumb for everything we do. That was a really nice leg yield right there. You kept a really good rhythm as you went. Which is, of course, always what we're trying to do. If we keep the rhythm, we know that we're maintaining the gymnastic quality of the horse. And as I see this horse over time, if you look behind your saddle right now, we can see the horse is a little bit high-hipped, and we can see that there's a little bit of dip behind the saddle there in the horse's back. That is all going to fill up if you continue to do this work, which is, of course, what we want to have happen. Remember that anytime you can see a hole, if you will, or dip behind the saddle up to the hip with any horse, it means they're well on their way. They're starting to get kissing spine. That's basically what's happening, is the spine is beginning to collapse downward and sort of disengage from the hips, if you will. So if you didn't do the kind of work you're now doing, that would begin to just get worse and worse, and ultimately the horse goes lame. So we can see here that you did need that shin bone on here, as it helped you with that transition a little bit. You can see how he sort of brought his head up. And it's still not quite swinging enough. We can see how the hind legs are a little bit stabby, almost looks like a little bit on his toes there, if you will. But once you're getting it going here, it's beginning to open up. And watch what happens as the horse stretches down. We'll see that the hocks begin to work more actively like that. We see a little better, but still not quite enough. So when we get to that position, we have to ask for a little bit more activity. That's looking a little bit better, but still needs more swing in the trot than what we're getting here yet. That's a little better there. We start to see it becoming a little more active. And there's where you'd want to just give them a little bit of tap, a bump with your legs or your whip a little bit, and just try to keep encouraging, just like you did in the walk, encouraging it to get longer and the horse to stretch deeper into the contact. Right there. Now it starts to look a little better when you get down into that position. And that was just the right thing to do when you made that transition, which was to ignore that the transition went badly and not try to do it over and over again. We never school transitions until the horse is consistently over its back. And then what you'll find is you don't have to. As the horse gets over its back in the walk and it gets over its back in a trot, it will start making its transitions beautifully without you really having to do much of anything. And that's when you know that, once again, you're ready to get rid of that shin bone, for instance. So it's probably a good idea that you keep this on for right now. But as I said, begin to have days where you just do only the walk at first, and leave the shin bone off and see if you can do that. Now there we start to get a little bigger swings. Still needs, there we go. It's starting to begin to work a little more actively there. That's much better. Now begin to look at the hocks. It looked a little bit irregular when you first started because the stride was so choppy and it wasn't really flowing over the back. Doing a great job. You can see how this horse sort of tries to pull its neck back into its body a little bit, and that's what you have to keep doing, is just letting it back out again, opening the horse from the back to the front to open that big swinging stride. Now, if you look closely with this horse, we can see there's still a certain degree of pull from the shoulders. That is, we're not seeing a really free shoulder swing yet, but it's getting better the more you stretch down. But remember that that's dependent on, as the horse develops strength over the back, the thrust of the hind leg will begin to thrust the front end of the horse up into the air. And then once it begins to do that, the legs just kind of touch and go, if you will. There's nothing of, the front legs don't do anything to motivate the horse forward. They don't drag and pull. So this horse is still doing that a little bit. You can see it's still just kind of pulling a little bit. The shoulders aren't quite swinging completely free yet. But you're well on your way to getting that to happen. What you're doing here is exactly how you do get that to happen. And once again, if we look at the horse's belly there, we can see how much those flanks have now come in even a little bit more. But of course, the good news is the more you do the walk correctly, the more you'll build walk. As long as the horse is working over the back in the walk, you're building top line. So, for instance, if you have a very weak horse and is too weak yet to do much trot work, what we do is more walk work. As long as that walk work is correct, it will eventually correct the trot work, just like the trot work will eventually correct the canter work. And then in the end, the canter work will improve everything else by bringing a little more impulsion and energy back to the ride, back to the horse. But this is looking much better now. Notice it doesn't look quite so stifled now. It's swinging a little bit. But as I said in the beginning, this horse is not a horse with giant hock movement to begin with. So you've got to maximize what you've got. And you're starting to do that quite well. And that's always a good sign, actually, that when they relieve themselves when we ride, that tells you they're trying to push the back up, which is what usually activates the bowels a little bit. So you can see how much more that abdominal wall is pulled up. So that's what happens. The stomach wall starts activating the intestines. And as part of the digestive process is having a good, firm abdominal wall because it helps digestion. And look how much trimmer the horse now looks. And actually, I think even now the back, if you look at the saddle going there now, I think the back has flattened out a little bit behind the saddle from when you started. Right there is quite good and quite consistent. Still just, once again, it's more a matter of doing more so the horse develops. I don't think there's much more you could do right now than what you're doing. Now it's a matter of doing this enough that we begin to develop enough top line that that thrust of the hind legs can begin to lift the front end. And remember, that's what collection is. Collection is the degree to which the thrust of the hind legs lifts the front end. So what we lose in forward motion, we gain in loft in the gait. But the gait stays round instead of what we see with so many examples today, where everything that they're calling dressage today is just front end action, like a saddlebred or Tennessee Walker. Getting a little slow there, and we see how it all kinds of flattens there a little bit, so a little tap there. But you're really doing a good job with your upper body. I like how you brought the horse back to a walk there. And you didn't sit until the horse did come back to the walk, so that's exactly what we want to do. We don't want at any time to be bouncing against the back of the horse. When the horse's back gets supple enough to be able to swing with your weight on it, you'll very easily be able to sit to the trot. And there's really no point in ever sitting to the trot until that begins to happen, because all it does is stop that from happening. So that's how we have to think in our training, that we're always thinking logically, and not doing things that are so out of sync with what the horse is actually capable of doing that we actually send the horse backwards, which is what we see so many people doing. And if you're getting in a fight with your horse every day, there's a problem there, because you're not recognizing the point at which the horse is not becoming willing to do what you want to do, which means you've overstepped the bounds of what's possible, if you will. For the most part, you'll see, as you think you have experienced already, when we keep the work in the realm of what the horse can actually physically do comfortably, horses go along quite well with this. And of course, as soon as they're out of pain, that is, if you're holding against the reins, we have to remember that we're always punishing the horse. And good job on that transition, and just about how you should do it there. Once again, the head started to come up, and you just encourage the horse to go more forward, and you let the shambone do the little work of straightening the horse out, which is what it should do at this point. So I would definitely keep this on for a little while longer, certainly for your trot and canter work. And just what you did right there, you just take up the slack and then send the horse on with your legs. So you're doing exactly what you should be doing. Very, very nice there. And just know that the more you do this, in a little while you'll begin to see, as I said, that hole will begin to fill up even more, though we have seen a good improvement. All right, and that's a really good way to start the canter right there. That was just about right for this horse. And it eased into it, and the horse actually stayed over its back really well, and the canter is staying over its back really quite nicely. So once again, this is a good enough canter that you're ready to do this work. And that was good. And we want to keep it to a short period of time, but look how much better the trot got after the canter. As I said, once you can canter correctly, the canter has a lot to do with just bringing a little more impulsion back to the horse, a little energy that we can control, and that's what that did. So that was exactly what you wanted it to do. I love how you're keeping all your turns and circles to wide open circles and turns. You're not driving the horse too far into the corners. What an improvement we see now. That was really good. So we can see how that canter really helped this horse. Now look how the horse is beginning to reach, how much freer. Go back and look at this horse in the very beginning when you sort of started that very sort of stilted looking trot. But that's all gone now. We're seeing a really good swing now. And once again, look how rhythmic. The horse now looks like it's sound. It looks like it might be a little unsound when you first started, just by the factor that we call a bridle lameness. The horse wasn't coming through the back, and therefore was irregular on the two sides. Once the horse becomes over its back, then you can begin to see them swinging equally, and that's part of what tells us that they are working over their back, when the gait suddenly looks symmetrical. Remember, when we talk about rhythm, we're talking about the rhythm between the two ends of the horse. We're not talking about the speed the horse is going. Another good transition, just as you should have done it, you just let the reins be relaxed, you let the shambone do the work of correcting if it needed to be, and you send the horse on and forward. Really good work here, and that's just about the way it should be. I love how you're sitting up there. And I always remind everybody, when if you read the German manual on all this work and they talk about stretching, they talk about you leaning forward in the stretch. But I remind you, look at the pictures in their book. They show you somebody with very short stirrups doing that. So you can lean forward if you have a jumping length stirrup so that you can balance like in a two-point position without throwing the horse out of balance. But if you have a longer stirrup and you lean forward, you're going to throw all the weight onto the horse's forehand and unbalance the horse. So when we ride and stretch in a long stirrup, we just keep our shoulders right where they are. We let the horse stretch down and we stretch up so that we're now in the center of the ball, if you will. Really good trot now. Really good, really regular. And we've actually begun to see a little bit more lift. That is, the shoulder begin to swing a little more freely. There we go. And you're using the technique of widening your hands really, really well. And of course, this is not how we go ride at a horse show. This is a schooling technique so that we can maintain contact as we're teaching a horse so that it can be ridden with a little more equitation, if you will, like would be in a ring. But we have to train a horse first. Part of the problem with the way riding is taught today is that everybody is taught that there's one position. This is the position that you want. But if the horse isn't going well, we have to do other things sometimes to get the horse over the back and get it so that we can then equitate, if you will. But how much better trot this is from where you started. So much more active. We're seeing a more free shoulder. And you're doing just the right thing as he comes up. You just follow upwards with your hands and you let them come right back down again as the horse stretches into the contact. Very, very nice. And look at this trot compared to what you started with. And once again, examine the horse itself. Look at the belly. Look how trim the horse looks. Looks completely different than when we first started. Really good work. I suggest anybody watching this, when we get to the end of this, go back and look at what the trot was like when she started. Really good work. I really like your upper body. That's exactly what we look for, that you're stretching up, lifting your chest, flattening your shoulder blades into your back. And that never changes. And we go into a jumping position, pretty much the same thing, only now we're going to have a little shorter stirrup and we lean forward. But our upper body, that straightness in the upper body should be the same. That is, we don't round our shoulders over and down when we go into a jumping position. Really good walk now. And look how much more deeply the horse is stepping under its body now than when you started. And you're doing just the right thing after that hard canter work to come back and let the horse really stretch out again. Use that walk to build muscle. I was thinking about, with a horse at this level, you're probably thinking in terms of your work percentage-wise on a given day is probably 60% done in the walk and maybe 30% done or even 40% done at this point in the trot and then 10% in the canter, if you will, and that changes as we go on. But we always begin at the same place. The biggest thing to remember is your horse progresses in training, you still begin in the same place. Just like a person coming into the gym who knows how to work out without injuring themselves, they learn to stretch before they warm up their muscles before they start asking for more extreme exercises. In that way, you stay sound, and that's how we keep horses sound, by not overstressing them. People today, however, seem to have forgotten that, and especially trainers, and I think a lot of that has to do with them just not caring and not knowing any better. I'm not sure which it is. Probably a combination of all of the above. Beautiful walk now. There, and watch as he gets into that stretch how the walk becomes much more 4-beat and steady and rhythmic. And that's always a sign. Anytime you feel your horse losing the rhythm of the walk, the 4-beat of the walk. Remember, walk is not a 2-beat gait, it is a 4-beat gait. However, the rein back is just the opposite. The rein back is a 2-beat gait, and if your rein back looks like it has 4 beats, you know the horse is hollow. So just the reverse of going in the other direction. Really good walk here. So I look forward to seeing you advance with this horse. I think you've done a really good job with it. And Aaron did a wonderful job of getting you started in all this work. Now look how much more nicely the horse began to swing in that trot after all that warm-up you've done. So notice the belly is still lifted. But that's very normal what you do. She's just going through a little stage of how much do I need to do a little bit here. And you're doing the right thing by just following up without demanding and not trying to pull the horse's head down. Let the horse come to it like that. There, much better there, like that. Now look how the horse changes. Look how the gaits change. So yes, I definitely keep the Chambone on for a while longer with this horse, but as I said, if you have a day, which everyone should have days, when you don't do anything but walk, don't feel like you need to walk, trot, and canter your horse every day. It doesn't need. In fact, it should have plenty of days, as we used to do. I don't know what it's like where you are, but unfortunately, California's become very landlocked in terms of where we can ride. So we don't have many places from my barn to hack out. We don't have any from my place. But that was a really nice canter transition. You finessed that right into it in a really good way. And once again, it's a good enough canter. That is, the horse is over its back enough to do the horse some good. Really nice there. And as she stretches into it, look how it improves. That's really good. Go online. I'm sure you have already, but, a wonderful event rider right now who's been winning everything. His name will come to me in a moment. But if you go and watch how beautifully his horses, Michael Young, that is, watch how beautifully his horses canter across country without him hardly ever touching the reins. You never see any tension in the lower side of the neck. Exactly as it should be. So really good work there, and just about the amount of canter I expect this horse to do. I think you've done a really good job, and I look forward to seeing you in the not too distant future. But really good work with this. You're well on your way to having this horse over its back. That is, you have it over its back, and it will continue to develop from here. And you can see how when the head comes up, how that everything disengages. But you did just the right thing. When horses look at things, we never stop. We just send them right on forward. So great work. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. with Lauren in Montana. Really good work there in the trot. Great job. As I said, this is a really good one to go back quickly and look at the beginning and look where this horse started in terms of the position, its body, look at its belly, how's it engaged, its core upwards. Great job. Very well done. See you next time.